going to replace the lower control arms on a BMW e60. This is actually on an e61 wagon, but it's the same part number as a e60. So there's the part there that we're going to be putting on. It is a lower control arm. And step one, of course, is just to jack him up, get the wheels off. So I'll jack him up, got a stand underneath, and remove the wheels off, and then we'll get underneath and show you how to change that. The top, this is the front control arm here, undoing the top bolt here. I use my big breaker bar that I use on my socket here. I'm not using the ratchet head, but using my big breaker bar, and I was just able to jolt that off. When you pull it gently, the wheel turns, and you can't actually undo it, so I was just able to boom, 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 and jolt it, and get that off. Because this is a ball joint, it's free to spin on that little shaft of the bolt you're undoing. So the socket was just spinning the ball joint where it was. So there's a T40 torque in the top of the bolt. So we need to drop the T40 torque screw, TORX, into the top of the bolt to hold it in place, and then undo it with an open ender. It'd be easier rather than a ring, but undo it with an open ender to get that bolt off. You should do it before now, but obviously you want to get your new part and just hold it up onto your old part and just make sure that you've got the right part, which in this case I have. That's a perfect match. And you can see here what I was talking about with the T40, little bit in the end of the bolt there so that you can hold it and you can undo the nut. It's because it's a ball joint. There's that blue plastic protector on there at the moment. You do take that off. I don't think anyone's going to try and install that with that on there. This is just to protect this in transit and transport. So you see in the end there, it has that T40 so you can hold it, because this is a ball joint. It's a part that can move. So when you're replacing this lower control arm, you're replacing that ball joint, and you're replacing this rubber bush back up the back. Now again, it's a BMW. Don't buy stuff, you know, the cheapest there is made in China. Get something, this one's made in Taiwan, and it's a decent brand. Or get a German one if you can. I couldn't. Sadly, BMW have made this stupid expensive. Here in Australia, a genuine one of these is $660, and I paid $60 for this. And there were some down there much cheaper. No, sorry, it wasn't 60. It was more like 70 or nearly 80, something like that. But anyway, it wasn't 660. I went to BMW and thought, you know, let's put something genuine on. Let's do the right thing. But you know, this is an 11-year-old car, so these are really good. Have been highly recommended them. So this is the one that's going to go on, and I know it'll do really good years of service. Well, here we go. We're getting the two 18mm combination spanners. I did actually you do need a second one to hold this, because it's quite tight. You don't want to risk the wrong size spanner and strip your nuts. So I just went down and actually bought a $1 18mm combination spanner, because it just has to hold the nut in place. I'm doing the hard work with the other good quality one. Then we just undo this, work it off, and then the fun bit will be actually getting that ball joint part out there. I've had a previous 3 Series BMW, an E46 that I did, but there is a special tool for that. Over here, tie rod separator, ball joint separator. You see by the shape, you can drive that in with a hammer on the end, absolutely smash it in, and separate the ball joint when it comes to breaking that part away. What am I talking about? I'm talking about this here. Now this will destroy the ball joint, so it's just for use on the old one. But this shaft here is a force fit inside and it gets rusty. I definitely recommend putting WD-40 or penetrine to try and loosen it. So you just try to tap it down and hopefully it'll come out easy. If it doesn't, you will need a tie rod separator, one of these guys, to jam in there and be able to break that hold so that can drop out. But we'll show you that if we get to it. Hopefully it'll be easy, and I hope yours is easy. I was thinking that I might be able to get this off because I can get onto the nuts quite easily, but because the bolt's so long, it's not actually going to come out of there, enable us to get that part out. So this little cover here does have to come off, and just a little 8mm spanner. There's one bolt right up there, and there's one bolt on the underneath edge right there, and take that panel out, and then it'll give us room, a lot more room to get on, which you can get a socket on the end as well. So again, if you take that cover off, we'll be able to use a socket rather than having to have the 2 combination spanners, and this will give us good access and obviously room also to get that bolt out. Getting that little cover off, we've got one more screw up here, up the top, it's bolt, sorry, another 8mm bolt, and then down here on the corner by the arm there's an 8 Phillips head screwdriver. So there's 4 we've got to get that off, but because it's connected right across the bottom from here. Let me zoom out a bit. This guy here is connected right across the bottom. Here is the happy moment. While I was working on this end of this lower control arm, this end dropped out, so no banging, no hammering, no nothing. Let's go this end first. Yep, we're out, and oh, look at that. That literally dropped into my hand. So again, we put it down and we go, yes, we have exactly the same part. Hallelujah. And we put the new one in and just reverse everything. But taking that cover off made it a whole lot easier. All of a sudden I could get a socket onto the end here. I had done it with 2 combination 18s, but a whole lot easier with a socket, and you need it in order to be able to pull, need that cover off in order to be able to pull the bolt out. So there you go. And I've actually, it's a very convoluted cover. It goes up and around and up in here and up in here and all sorts. So I've just actually got it hanging down just because I couldn't be bothered trying to get it perfect and all back up where it's tucked up there next time around. That's plenty of room to get it in and out. So we'll reinstate it. I've just taken 3 bolts and 1 screw out. So now we just reverse and put the new arm back in. So we're putting the new guy on, and that's just a simple matter of putting the ball joint right there, up and through, and just line that up. You've got a shaft, you don't want to scratch it or mark it, so just bend it to the right place, as in the ball joint moves around, slide it up, get your nut on so it doesn't drop out. And then the other side, you need to line it up so that you can get that bolt in. And my little tip for how to line that up, I've got an electrician's screwdriver here. It's got a bit of plastic on it. You can actually stick that in the hole. Just get inside those covers. Stick that in the hole, and then that's going to make lining that up a whole lot easier. You can just move that around and even give it a tap if you need to. Move it up a little bit, and that'll get it right. And then put the bolt in, and that with just a little bit of adjustment, we'll see if it goes in with the tap. Yeah, there we go. Bit of a tap in, bolt on the other side, and we're good. Now what we're going to do is just bolt it up loosely to start with, and come back this end to the ball joint end, and then do that up, and then we're actually going to lift up underneath here with the jack. Just put a bit of pressure to simulate the wheel being back on, and then do everything up tight like that with it up in its up position, and then we're good to go. She's back on, so put the cover back on and we're in business. Okay, so now we put this bolt back on, and it's 18mm either end, remembering, so holding it at one end with the 18, socket on the other end, we can get on there now. And I know someone's going to put in the comments and say to me, what is the proper torque spec for this bolt? Well, it's suspension. It's going to cop every bump, every knock, every pothole that goes on. So the torque spec is BT. Because when it comes to suspension, you've got to put it on bloody tight. You've got to give it all you got. Get your biggest spanner and do it up tight. Because suspension, as I said, this wheel's just moving constantly, going on, carrying on. So that's the torque spec, BT. Same down here on the ball joint. Do it up really, really firm because this is suspension, and yeah, it's serious. And for those of you that have got a torque wrench and are going to be doing up to a specific torque, then find the BT setting and adjust it up to that. Okay, so the cover's all back on and back neatly in place, all the bolts back in their right places. The screw down there on that bottom edge was a funny little guy that locked into place, but I just put it into the drill and gave it a slow turn, and it went up and locked into place nice and tight. All the bolts are done up to BT spec, so we are good. We're ready now to put the wheel back on. The only difference on the other side is there is a little connecting bar. It runs up here, 2 10mm bolts. So I'll show you that when I do the other side. This is the left-hand side, so the right-hand side has the little extra bit on it, but simple. 10mm bolts, you just need a couple of 10mm spanners and we can rip that off and swap it over. Put the wheel back on, go to the other side. Here we go, we're on the right-hand side now. And down here, you just see this bar coming down and connecting onto that lower control arm. And what we do, we just need to get a 10mm combination spanner or 10mm open end in there to hold that on that side, like that. And then a 10mm ratchet I'm going to use on the other end to crank that open. Then you just undo that, it'll just press out of the way, because that cover will come out of the way, and then you just do the tie rod arm exactly the same as the other end. Undo the 18mm bolts up here and the 21 or 22 down here and swap it out. So that is the only difference. You don't have to undo this at the top, you just undo it at the bottom with the two 10mm bolts. Okay, so more on that little bolt that's running up off the lower control arm. You see it there. I've reattached it back on. Where it goes to at the top, it's actually actuating an electronic switch. And this side, when you bolt the big fat end here through the bush through, there's actually this clamp on the outside comes down, this bracket, and that's mounting this electronic switch. So what's actually going on here is that when the suspension's going up, it's sending a signal through electronically, so the car knows. So it's part of the suspension setup. So when you're putting this bolt through, that bracket sits on the outside, and then it's just held in place with the bolt that holds the lower control arm, and it's got a plug, electrical plug coming in the top, and the arm up here. You can't see it when that little cover's on. We get the cover out of the way, and that's what that extra little bar's for, and why the little notch is on the control arm.